Looks like he recovered his feet.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of The Roundtable. I am your host, Danny Ellyson. I'm joined tonight with my panelist, as
Danny,
always.
you're muted.
No, I'm not muted. You're muted, Derrick. However, in the introduction, today is October 21st. It's 7 o'clock and we're on at our normal spot. That being said, tonight we've got a lot to cover. We're 2 weeks away from our election season, and we want to start off with the election censorship that's kind of right here in our face. Derrick, I want to come to you for just a minute. There's 2 points in the censorship that we're experiencing at this moment. So first is we've got the external censorship, right? So international, overseas, but no accountability here at home. So Google's not facing any backlash, but Chinese-based media companies are. And the media and some of our rhinos up there in politics are trying to differentiate between the two. But we as layman folk here at home know that there is no difference. The second censorship is indirect, something that we don't really know is happening. For example, one of our newest party nominees running for the United States Congress that gives us lip service on the front and turns around and endorses other rhinos in the Senate. Derrick, what say you about censorship, our politics, and what this looks like for the next 2 weeks?
So, Scott, Josie, and I'm sure as well as yourself, know I have been screaming from the rafters since back in June. Briefly, Tucker Carlson did an expose on the censorship of Google silencing conservative voices. Mm-hmm. He pointed out Senator Mike Lee, who he said unequivocally could do something about it, but has not. He refused to come on his show, refused to talk about it. He talked about Doug Collins and another gentleman in the House saying they could do something about it. July, a month later, now prior to that, Doug Collins had written a letter supporting big tech, basically saying there was no such problem. They did not need to be broken up. And I'm just giving you just a little timeline. Then in July, because Tucker Carlson put them on blast, all of a sudden a bill, I don't have it in front of me, was introduced. Doug Collins put a link to it on his website that following in July. However, Doug Collins did not sponsor the bill. He's not even a co-sponsor of the bill. Someone else sponsored the bill, and there were about 7 other co-sponsors, and Doug Collins' name is not listed anywhere. No movement has happened on that bill since July. It was merely introduced. Fast forward, Hunter Biden, the laptop, the information is turned over. We find out that the FBI has had it. Then the big shutdown on New York Post, one of the oldest papers in the country. Now, tabloid has a different meaning from when it was first put out, but we all know now when we see the word tabloid, we think of the Sun, the Globe, the newspaper tabloids with the salacious stories, most of them made up just, a lot of nonsense gossip. That's what we think of. So what does Fox go and do? Fox starts referring to the New York Post. Well, a tabloid paper, the New York Post, and that's what I say, Fox deals with, they do a lot of double dealing. But at any rate, what is significant in all of this censorship is now they have come up with an antitrust lawsuit against Google and others. Why now? Because everybody is screaming about it and everybody sees what's going on. And so now they want to save face. Additionally, today in the Epic newspaper, we learned that they have now labeled 6 additional Chinese companies as foreign missions. In other words, they realize now that they are majority ran by Chinese entities. But here's the funny part, Danny, in that article. It says, we want the American people to know that their news is from these entities is coming from China so that they will not be confused by thinking it is a part of our free press, our free press. That is that, and see, many people won't see that little tidbit. Our free press? Are you kidding me? After what they just did with in the New York Post over the Hunter Biden situation, our free press? Give me a break. It's too little too late to try and save face. They will all be exposed. And in the video that I posted from the gentleman who is of Chinese origin, he clearly stated Democrats and Republicans, he said, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, we have your secrets. And the Democrats, there are Democrats, Republicans, and Bloomberg, yeah, the guy that ran for president, are all involved. This stuff will be revealed. And one last point I want to make, forgive me for going too long, but the people, it needs to get out there. Steve Bannon came out and said Trump deliberately waited because he has had this information. A breadcrumb in the town hall that he did was when they asked him about QAnon, and please, people, stop telling me there is no QAnon. That was the question. And of course, after that, everybody was saying Trump sidestepped it. He didn't sidestep it. He said, I don't know anything about the group, but he did say this, and nobody caught it. He said, I know they are strongly opposed to pedophilia. Well, what comes out of the Hunter Biden laptop? Hunter Biden is engaged in pedophilia with underage Chinese girls. All right. Trump already knew about this and he dropped that breadcrumb. He's got the information. And what Steve Bannon said was, if not this weekend, Danny, the weekend of the 30th, Trump is going to open up a treasure trove of information heretofore not known with details. What and his waiting has all been about this. They wanted Biden to be the nominee and not Bernie Sanders. And he knew that they would do what they did to Sanders the last time around, although I believe Sanders was complicit, got bought off each time. But they wanted Biden to be the nominee so that all of this stuff could be brought to light. Now, of course, no one has told me this officially, but I am just looking back and just putting the pieces together. And I tell people all the time, I don't do conspiracy theories. I do conspiracies that are provable. And this stuff is bearing fruit. I yield.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, go get you a glass of tea and take a sip. I told y'all it was coming tonight, and this is just the beginning. You think that we have lit a fire under Mr. Derrick Grayson? It is getting ready to go further. But before we go down that road, I want to come over to Josie Cruz, and I want to discuss specifically what's going on in the United States congressional race with one Miss Marjorie Greene. So Marjorie presented herself here to the citizens of the state of Georgia in and outside of her district as the people's candidate, somebody that would not sell out, that would hold the line, and all the way through her campaigning actually spoke out against Kelly Loeffler, spoke out against Doug Collins, called them rhinos herself, and bridged with the American people. And now that she has stepped into, with the nomination from the GOP here in the state of Georgia, approaching her November 3rd election, look what she did. Josie, the reason I'm coming to you is because I want to know what your parallel is, because you and Marjorie Greene are neck and neck. Both of you are congressional candidates on November 3rd's ballot. Is this something that you would find acceptable, a shift?
Well, the difference between Marjorie Greene and me is that she got a lot of money from the Libertarian caucus. I did not have no funding or money, anything from any group or PAC. Second, she may be saying that she will stop socialism, but when she endorsed Mrs. Laffer, she's for globalism. So I got to the point to think that it's all talk, and I don't see her stopping the socialism like she was saying.
Right. So in theory, it's all the same thing, right? Globalism, socialism, communism, any of it's basically an overthrow of our rights here in the United States and the republic that we live in, correct?
Exactly. She just cave in into the system of Georgia. And you know what? That is funny because yesterday, no, that was yesterday, Monday? No, on Monday. The other one who endorsed Mr. Collins was Vernon Jones. And Vernon Jones hesitated to endorse my candidacy in the district number 4. And Collins also refused to endorse me for the district number 4. So when I saw Vernon Jones endorsing Collins, I said, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Why? Because both of them, they are claiming that they want to help President Trump, but they want to keep on sending Hank Johnson to President Trump over there in the House. So there are some things that are going on that I mean, why she couldn't stay by herself until she got elected in November? Why? Why did she have to endorse Kelly Loeffler? Why? So that's when I say she gave in.
Right,
I mean,
but see, all of this is part of the censorship machine that Derrick was just talking about. So we've got censorship problems at the federal level, obviously through the Senate, with our media channels internationally, and all the way down to congressional races. And I think what you're seeing is censorship being applied by way of the state GOP onto Marjorie and her candidacy, but it's being fed from her out to us. So Josie, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you, Josie, but Alex Johnson, I want to bring you in real quick. We're talking specifically about censorship, but I want to yield to you your 7 minutes here on the show because next I want to light a fire. And there's some points that I want to bring up. So Alex, the next 7 minutes is yours, sir.
Oh, well, right now, I mean, I just want to engage in the overall discussion, but I think that the main point of censorship, one thing that I noticed today that I found very fascinating is I wonder if all of you have heard of the Babylon Bee, which is a satire site. They make up stories. I mean, they have a new site now, I think, called Not the Bee, where they take real stories and publish them that would sound like satire, like just ridiculous things that our politicians or government have done. But Babylon Bee, a satire site, Facebook decided to demonetize them in the past couple days, meaning that taking away whatever tools that can be used on Facebook in order to make money for the Babylon Bee, because they published a satire piece that was, I think it was based on a Monty Python skit, which was not is a clear joke, and Facebook deemed it to be advocating violence, and therefore told them that they could either remove the link or they would continue to have demonetized the Babylon Bee site, which is a type of blatant censorship that they are currently enacting. But it's very concerning that apparently now even joke sites can't be publicized. But when it comes down to the legal realm, that's just a normal, I mean, that is something that has been a long time coming, that private businesses, private entities are perfectly capable and always have been capable of choosing what content is on their platforms. And now it's just coming to roost. They're doing it during the selection cycle, and they're probably going to continue doing it in the future of censoring what people can and cannot hear and see on their platforms now that they have pervaded society. I mean, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, I mean, all of those entities can choose to just not let certain people's voices be heard. I was thinking years ago that if Mark Zuckerberg had wanted to be president, he could have just could have run for office and just cut off displaying content for any of his opponents. And that's clearly something that, that isn't what is currently happening, but they easily can influence elections and choose what philosophies and mindsets are heard. And that is a legal thing for them to do. And it is highly unethical. It's highly immoral. It's not what people signed up for, but it's what's going on today. And I think it's very concerning for the people who use those platforms and rely on them for information, because it can easily be biased and people don't even realize it when it's happening. Speaking of censorship that people don't know about, I mean, that's what's going on. So that's all I really have to say at this point. So I appreciate everyone listening.
So Alex, if I understand what you're saying properly, you're an advocate for Tom and MySpace, and that we should all return to that platform and encourage our followers to do so. All right, Derrick, I want to come back to you. Thank you, Alex. Derrick, I'm going to come back to you on this next topic. And I saw you kind of drafting and taking notes. You looked a little bit interested in what Alex was saying. He brought up some really intricate points, and that's the censorship of even satire, because it doesn't fit the narrative. Now, let's break this in a little bit more. Biden is currently campaigning on isolated commercials. We've got commercials out there that are targeting, and I quote, the Negro base, and also commercials out there targeting the Islamic base, specifically speaking to the Nation of Islam. What say you, Derrick?
Biden is following a tried and proven method of pandering for blacks. Now, I am a black man. I will tell people quickly, there's nothing exceptionally special about me. So it's hard for me to understand why a person would not want to know the truth versus what they are being told by someone, and something that they can go and look up for themselves and see that it is patently not true. I can play the video of Biden basically saying, we don't care about your background, super predators, Negro males. I don't care that you didn't have a loving mom. I don't care you didn't have a dad in home. I don't care that you had a hard time. Things like, I don't want my kids mixed up in a racial jungle. We're talking segregation. You can find articles of him standing with Robert Byrd to keep schools segregated in Virginia. You hear him where he bragged about the crime bill. Then last weekend comes out and says, I made a mistake, because he was being called on it. All of these things, still, my brothers and my sisters, I don't know why they won't get it. I hate saying things like black people are just dumb, because I know that that is not true. But I cannot understand where this motivation comes from. Now, I was on a forum last night, and in my closing, I didn't talk about myself other than, if you want to know more about me, go to GraysonForGeorgia.com. I thanked Brian Slowinski for understanding the Constitution, Alan Buckley for understanding the Constitution, Candace Taylor for understanding what it is with our children and having a profession where she deals with our most precious resources. I even thank a young black woman, I don't recall her name right off the top of my head, but she understood what it is to decriminalize pot now. So I thank those candidates for what they said. And then I turned right around and said, all I have heard tonight on this forum is free stuff, free stuff, free stuff, killing babies, and Negroes need extra steps in order to survive in this country. I don't know where that mindset comes from, but it is what white politicians push. And we, yes, I absolutely want to have money given to historically black colleges. Why? It's a private institution. And that's not the government's role. Are they giving it to Princeton? Are they giving it to Berkeley? Why do the HBCUs need it? Could it be because they simply fail at what they're providing in terms of an education? Why not let's look at why they are not failing versus why the government should go and fund them. And if the government is going to fund them, why not make them no longer private institutions, but public institutions? So this is what I can't understand, Danny, what it is that Black people cannot see, and their insistence to their own detriment of more government intrusion into our private lives. More government does not work. And I can say 100 times over and over, while Richard Dean Whitfield, a Democrat that's running, I want to provide guaranteed jobs, guaranteed this, guaranteed that. Nobody can be evicted. I just heard there's a case going on here in Georgia, and Alex can speak to it, where the Supreme Court is looking at whether or not landlords can evict people that they have not been able to evict, that's living in their properties, and they are saying it is doing us harm. Now think about that. I understand that the government is responsible for locking down, keeping people from going to work. They're the ones responsible for it. You got the people up there in Washington, D.C. battling over this next stimulus because Nancy Pelosi wants additional money for the failed Democratic states. So there's a holdup, but yet you have people, landlords, who are suffering because they can't rent their properties to people who can pay. Government intrusion, shutting down. Government intrusion, no, you can't evict that person, so we're going to make sure that you struggle just like that person who can't go to work. We're going to keep them in your property, so you're going to lose too. And Nancy Pelosi has the nerve to say, these people elected us to go here and represent them because we understand their plight. This woman eats $15 a pint ice cream, $24,000 refrigerators. How in the hell does she understand anything? So I'm hoping that one of y'all can tell me what it is about Black people that wants them, that makes them or motivates them to want more government intrusion into their lives versus getting government out of the way so that we can do for ourselves. And why do white people, I'm not saying all, I'm speaking generally for both Blacks and whites, why do white people, generally speaking, think that Negroes need extra steps just to be successful? My mother picked cotton and got her bachelor's degree. My father got a master's degree. While he didn't pick cotton, he grew up in a 2-room shack in Dixon Mills, Alabama. He didn't need extra steps, but he had 2 parents that cared about education. Education was important to them, and they made it important to their children. I'm sorry, Danny, you have to cut me off, all right? Give everybody else as much time. That's my monologue. I just needed to get that out there.
I'm not cutting off. Yeah. I'm not cutting off not a damn thing. So here is my answer to what you had to say there, Mr. Grayson. So why does this racial divide exist? Josie brought up dominance and control, but I want to take it a step further. Because we as colored people were bred to. We were told for a very long time to sit down and shut up. And now we live in a day and an age where we're being brought forward saying that we have a voice. But you only have a voice at a certain table, according to the media and according to social media. Censorship has provided where most people from the demographic cultures that are on the lower end feel like their voice is only heard through the Democratic Party and the likes of Ms. Pelosi. The variable difference is that is emphatically false. It is inaccurate. It is not true. It is a lie. But it is directly put into your face and sold to you consistently through all of your social media channels, through all of the media outlets, saying the only way that Black Lives Matter is for you to burn up the streets and march and picket. Black people don't have a voice in the collegiate system. That is a lie. Absolute lie. Josie, coming to you for a follow-up. Go ahead, girl. Come on.
You have the volume. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, come on.
The question that you asked me earlier, this is a simple, basically a basic example of what happened in Venezuela, how Venezuela got lost. With one politician promising something and then got together with another politician, got backroom deals, and then Venezuela is lost in what we know today, what is communism. Of course, everything starts with the socialism, with the soft socialism strategies. So I can see Marjorie Greene failing into that trap because she's trying to get with the globalist Kelly, fighting with Kelly against the other one, which is the same thing. Is she's not gonna be able to accomplish what she promised to the district if she continues this way. And when it comes to the subject that Derrick was talking about, remember, the only way that the candidates can fight socialism or communism in America is going back to basis. It's going back to the Constitution. The Constitution is the natural enemy of socialism. It's the natural enemy of the communist system. So if she really wants to fight socialism and stop socialism in her area outside the Atlanta area, she needs to go back to the Constitution. She don't need to go back to Kelly Loeffler. And I want to tell you something about my speech on Sunday. On Sunday, I break it down to the Conyers and the Covington area. I told them the district number 4 under the leadership of Hen Johnson, including Vernon Jones. Make it clear, Vernon Jones, it is under the socialist agenda implemented. It was implemented for over 20 or 30 years under the socialist agenda. That's why we see this disaster in district number 4, specifically in DeKalb County. Who was the CEO in DeKalb County for the long time? Vernon Jones. Now we saw Vernon Jones endorsing Doug Collins. So I hope Vernon Jones this time understand that his policies, or all the laws, policies that he implemented in DeKalb when it was the youth of Georgia. Now today's is nothing. I wish that he understand all this implementation that he did. He's part of the destruction of this community. So when I said that on Sunday, a lot of people clap because this is the truth. The only way that we can understand how socialism is in America, we gotta just see those cities under the control of the Democrat. That is socialism right there, right there. So you want that to spread on district number 5, district number 6, district number 7? We need to kick out socialism from inside Atlanta and the surrounder. While Marjorie is out there saying that she's going to stop socialism coming to her district, but she's doing this kind of deal with a globalist, which is the same as a socialist and government control on American. I'm telling you, she's wrong, dead wrong. And I don't see her accomplishing the promises that she said that she was going to do for district number 14. I yield back.
All right, there it is. Here we come, folks. Here we come. We still got a long mile to go. So Josie lays it out. Derrick sets it off, but Derrick made reference to Alex being able to validate some of the legal action taking place here in the courts. So Alex, I'm going to bring you back in to respond, in the topic with Derrick Grayson, when we're talking about censorship and this chaos, the policies that are really streamlining towards religion and race being the deciding factor.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes down to, and thanks for bringing me back into this, because I think that when it comes down to some of the racial divisions, I think that a lot of it is, it touched a little bit on what Josie's saying too, is that you need to look at the social pressures that are out there and the way that there's almost a uniformity. And I don't know if people being lemmings is the right way of putting it, but you have this pressure when somebody speaks up against the conformity of supporting the Democratic Party and Democratic policies, that you get shouted down and treated as if all of your successes mean nothing. I mean, you look at just recently, I don't know if any of you have caught 50 Cent coming out in support of the president. You have some comments from Ice Cube the other week. I think it was a week or two ago, that weren't necessarily supporting the president, but they were saying, look, we all need to turn around and specifically look into, like, and he was talking to the Black community, saying that we need to start looking at who is going to help us instead of just following Biden. I think that or following the Democrats. I think that he pointed out something along the lines that that he went to the Biden campaign with his ideas and plan, and they said, wait till after the election, while the Trump campaign actually incorporated some of it. And I think that that of course got the predictable response for anyone who hasn't been following the story. I mean, the Democrats all were up in arms at both people. They went off saying that 50 Cent being opposed to the tax policies of Biden meant that, you know, that he's an idiot or a traitor or selfish or whatever else. And I mean, it's this shouting down people who are stating policy opinions that are successful people in their own right. And apparently they suddenly mean nothing and matter to no one because they dared question the narrative. And I mean, I think until there is a acceptance among all of society that people's rights to speak and to disagree doesn't mean that the person should be shouted down and thrown from public discourse, especially when they aren't saying anything offensive. They're using their intellect to come to a different conclusion than a bunch of worthless political consultants who work for the Democrats. And because of that, they get treated, I mean, they get dehumanized, essentially. They get treated as less than human because they dared to question a narrative, to come to a different conclusion using their God-given intellect and their own life experiences. And I think that those basic concepts are being lost in politics. All of a sudden, we are not, you know, people are not allowed to use their reason, not allowed to use their rationality, not allowed to use their life experiences that led to their personal success to come to different conclusions on politics than have traditionally been seen and viewed. And I think at that point you really have to wonder what are rights and what's the purpose of being a free citizen if you aren't really free. I mean, is it really freedom if you aren't allowed to think independently? Is it really freedom if you aren't allowed to disagree with whatever is popular in the media, or that two political parties are saying you aren't allowed to you know, express? I mean, I think that the whole idea of freedom has been replaced in political discourse with, if you don't agree with the Democratic Party, then, you know, your opinion doesn't matter. And I think that that's very concerning. I mean, it's concerning on not just on racial lines, but it's definitely being used to try to enforce racial conformity.
Hey, Alex, brilliantly said. Beautiful take on that. But, you know, going back to what you said, God-given rights, how are they being compromised? Well, that's very easy to do in a society that has forgotten that God was the one that gifted us this Constitution, this land, this place. And our inalienable rights that were God-given originally. When you cut God out of it, it's very easy to watch humans mess things up. We have a history in the human species of destroying things when we turn our back on God. Alex, I want to stay with you for just a second. I've got a outside question coming in live, and the question is, you know, is there a legal way, from your understanding, your knowledge as a lawyer, to block socialism from actually becoming something that is implemented here in the United States?
And I mean, that's a good question. I mean, legally, to stop socialism, I mean, I would think that the Constitution is what should be enforced to protect a lot of that. I mean, you look way back to before the Lochner decision, and this ties into some of the court packing issues we talked about before, but it used to be that the United States Constitution was seen through court decisions. The Supreme Court interpreted it to say that pretty much your individual freedoms could not be infringed on by government regulations. That included government regulations on businesses that required them to act in certain ways, advertise in certain ways, and what happened is there were a lot of, when labor laws were being proposed, the Supreme Court was striking them down, saying that that's a private contract between individuals and it can't be restricted by the government. That has sort of gone to the wayside with our allowance and acceptance of this huge federal bureaucracy and administrative state. So in order to stop socialism, I mean, there really needs to be either a pushback to by the Supreme Court interpreting a lot of these laws and regulations as unconstitutional, or there needs to be some scale back of the administrative state. Right now, I mean, just about anything that travels in commerce, the Supreme Court has said that, you know, the federal government can find a way to regulate it or put restrictions on it if it travels in commerce, and that includes even if you're growing your own food. So there is a huge potential for federal laws that could end up pushing for socialism, and the way to really stop that is a return to the true meaning of the Constitution, or just we need to win on the political battlefield, because if we get a bunch of socialists into the federal government, they could pass a lot of laws that really stretch the limits. I mean, our Constitution is the best limitation on socialism, but it is. I mean, I would not put faith in 9 judges to be the way to protect our the basis of our political philosophy. I mean, if we aren't involved and educated, we could lose this country regardless of what's written in the Constitution, as many countries have learned. I mean, Venezuela has a constitution. I mean, we all know how much that that stopped Maduro and Chavez, sadly.
So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what Alex Johnson is saying is, if you like your country the way it was founded with the Constitution that it has, get off your ass, educate yourself, and start doing something about it. And for those of you that would prefer it to be different under socialism or communism, all of us here on this panel, I feel free to speak for it in saying you would have to come through us and the generations that stand with us beforehand. Brian Slawinski, coming to you. I want to talk a little bit. I want to change it up. We want to go to big tech. The issues going on with Doug Collins. So these commercials are just slamming us. I mean, they're everywhere, guys. From pop-up alerts on the phone in the morning at 6 a.m. when you're having coffee, the TV, the radio, inundated. There's so much fake and false information being pushed right here in local small town Georgia that it is absolutely unbelievable. Brian, you've got experience in the big tech market. You've got a little bit of a flirtatious background there, dealing with these issues and looking at them from a federal eye. So I want to bring you in there, Brian. What say you about this false narrative being pushed by the Collins team? You're still on mute, Brian. We're missing you.
Hear me?
There you go. Come on.
Okay. First off, Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler do not represent the everyday Georgian out there. So vote for somebody else, okay? Don't vote for one of the 3 stooges, as Matt Lieberman calls them. Vote for somebody that's actually going to go back and represent everyday Georgians. I mean, we just had great examples. We just had a debate yesterday that Mr. Grayson was in along with myself and 13 other candidates. The 3 stooges or the $1 million candidate didn't bother to show up. They think of it as a peasant debate, and they don't really care about what people think. They represent their special interests and the people that pull their strings. Now, as far as big tech goes, big tech pulls the strings too. Big tech can tell, Facebook and Twitter can tell you what to think, because they pretty much control what you see, and that's wrong. And I think we need, if they're going to be using the public airwaves, the internet was actually invented by the United States of America. So I could consider that public airwaves. I think we could use under licensing agreements like we do for television as well as radio, that if you're using the airwaves, you have to have a certain amount of things done that you have to promote the country and do it in such a way. But the way they're doing it right now, there's too much bad information out there. We're not getting the right information. We're getting false information, and that's bad for everyone. Everybody needs to get off their dust and actually research all the candidates. The problem is nobody's being covered. I mean, if you don't have $1 million, or you're not supported by big media, which is basically owned by six corporations in the whole country, you're not going to get covered, and that's bad for our country and bad for our republic. And we need to be pushing back as hard as we can.
I absolutely agree, Brian. Myself being a former candidate, I know what it's like to wield against a candidate that is heavily loaded in the financial world. But when it comes to the capability world, obviously, it landed all of us where we're at. And I assure you, each of you candidates coming off the ballot November 3rd, no matter what happens, remember these words. And folks out there watching tonight, remember these words. Be sure that your gifts will make room for you. There is no mistake in what you're doing or why you're doing it. Josie, coming back to you, let's talk a little bit about Trump's visit to Macon. I know you guys were down here in the low country. You came and dipped down here, got your feet wet below the gnat line, and felt a little bit of a mugginess that's down here a little bit different. How was it? I think you're on mute. I can't hear you, Josie. Still no joy. We're not hearing anything. No action.
I got a good gossiping for all of you guys. Okay, what happened in Macon with me? So I received a call on Wednesday by the leader of Trump Victory Team saying, Josie, I got 2 VIP tickets for you to go and see President Trump on Friday. So I said, oh, okay. I was not even thinking to go because the last 4 times that I applied, they never answered back to me. It seems like somebody is running the list. They pass it through to the service. The Secret Service don't want me to be in those events lately. The last one was in Faith and Freedom, and I had a good thumbs up from the VP, Mike Pence. So that was the last one. After that, I couldn't attend to the other one. So anyways, I said, okay, well, now that you're calling me, I'm going to take my day off. Of course, like a good Republican, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So I did not get paid that day, okay? So I went with my campaign manager. My brother went along with me, and then we went over there, and then the director said, Joe Proenza will greet you in the entrance. He will tell you what to do and where to go. Okay, so here I come. I see Mr. McProenza over there, and then he gave me the necklace with the 2 tickets, and then he said, okay, go ahead, go walk. What was my surprise? At the moment the president came in, everything was paralyzed. The Secret Service took over the whole floor. Nobody can get up. Nobody can move. Everybody stay. I was on the right side, no, on the left side of the president, and everybody else, all the candidates, all the representatives, the governor, everybody was sitting in the other side. So Mr. Proenza didn't even bother to tell me where to go, what to do, and where to sit. Okay? That was the welcome and the greeting from Mr. Proenza GOP. So
what you're saying is Trump did a great job, but the staff on site there kind of left you high and dry.
Yes.
We lost you again, Joseph. We lost you again on the mic. Hey, while we work that technical thing out, let's come back to you, Derrick. If I'm not mistaken, you were there as well.
Yes, I was there. I recorded only the excitement and the energy that I felt with folks coming in. I had a little bit of a situation where Carlos and Jeffrey were passing out my push cards. Doug Collins saw them and sent security over to stop them from passing them out, but they were already given out by that time. And the energy was just unbelievable. And a lady came over and said, see, everybody keeps shaking your hand. Who are you? And I just gave her one of the push cards. And she said, you know what? Because when I got there, I was sitting in the rafters behind Trump. But that metal bench doesn't work too much with these glutamus, these old glutamus, what is it? Glutamus maximus?
Gluteus maximus.
Gluteus maximus. Yes. I gave my seat up to some other people, and I went down and sat in the little, with the other, the plastic chairs. And, it was more fun being around those people. I had more elbow room. And a lady walked over and said, asked who I was, and I gave her my push card. And she said, you just got my vote simply because you're sitting down here with us. And, you never know. It's the smallest things that will change a person's mind. And I will venture a guess that where that was coming from is rather than separate myself as something extra special, like a lot of politicians will do. I'm just ordinary people, man. And one of the things that I am glad that I do to show people, and I mentioned this earlier, when I got done last night, I openly thanked several of the candidates for their understanding of this or that or support of that or whatever. Brian was one of them. I do that because, Danny, I don't have to win if there's somebody there that's going to do the job. I wouldn't have even, and trust me, my decision might have been different had I known Brian or Annette Davis Jackson or Candace Taylor were running. But God wanted me in this race for a reason. And I did not, I had said, unless he makes it a way for me to run, I will not run. But he did that. He wanted me in this race for a reason. And so part of that is I will acknowledge the other candidates that I feel will do as good a job as I would. And that is why I thank them. That is why I tell people, if you don't like the way I part my hair, if you don't like how I talk, there are some other people, and I say their names. So, you've never seen me running around talking about I'm the only candidate that does this or that. There are other candidates that are worthy of your vote. It don't have to be me, but somebody has to go, and somebody has to actually do the job. Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, those less than 12 individuals with a constitutional voting record above 80% are simply not getting it done. And Trump has basically been governing by way of executive order. And that is not what we need. In these last 4 years, we need politicians that will get things done legislatively, and the rhinos that we have there are not getting it done. Senator Mike Lee, Doug Collins took no action upon Google, and they were in a position to do so. Kelly Loeffler is up there. You don't hear them talking about her husband in the media. The seat was bought. He is one of the owners of the New York Stock Exchange. She's on that committee, and they're making a move to take us to the next form of fiat, digital currency. That's what her seat is all about. And she keeps saying, I vote with Trump 100% of the time. Vote with him on what? Ain't nothing been passed. You wasn't even up there when we got the tax reform, the tax reduction, and you wasn't up there when we got the criminal justice reform. So what the hell is she talking about? I vote with Trump 100% of the time. You mean you agree with him in words? That's easy. I tell Doug Collins wasn't supporting Trump. I remember when Johnny Isaacson came out and denounced President Trump along with a number of other senators, including Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. Do y'all remember that? Have you forgotten?
Derrick, I'm gonna come back to you. I want to get Brian in on this. And you told me earlier to cut you off, and I didn't want to do that. But in closing to one of your spreads that you just said, that God had a reason for you running. I want to be very clear. All things work to the glory of God and to those who are called to fulfill and according to his purpose. Brian, I've seen you down here since we were talking about Trump being a Macon, brother. The mic is yours.
Well, I was there actually. Derrick came over and sat down with the people down the side by me. So you know, it was nice to see him there. He got to put out some of his cards. Security got on top of me and I brought 3 of my sons along, and they literally made us turn our t-shirts inside out that had my name on it, because hey, you know, you can't advertise or anything like that. But I saw tons of Doug Collins stickers all over the place. But that's just wrong, quite honestly. You know, that's you know, you should allow the candidates to talk to people, period. And I thought that was very, very bad form that you know, Mr. Collins had stuff all over the place, and you know, here you have security making us turn our t-shirts inside out, and then we couldn't even bring in our push cards. So
when our federal tax dollars pay our federal agents to push the politics of elected officials and ignore the rights of the people and the Constitution.
And, you know, and here's the thing is, you know, like I like to say, between Collins and Loeffler, you know, they're Johnny come latelys when it comes to supporting Trump. Loeffler didn't even support Trump till she got appointed. Okay, she was supporting Mitt Romney, and she supported other Democrats. She supported Stacey Abrams through the WNBA, and supported the ticket proceeds going to Planned Parenthood as well. Wrong.
So whatever was most convenient to get her as close as she could get.
Correct.
Josie, I see your hand up there. Alex, I want to come to you for a second. I need to talk to the lawyer for just a minute. So these individuals, our candidates, go to a Trump rally in the state in which they're running that bars a seat to the constituents in which they're sitting in an arena with. And security is given advice, obviously, to approach them and make them take down campaign relative bannering. So whether it be the shirt or a sticker or something, but currently elected officials running for a new seat and or running for re-election are being allowed to display. Is that not some type of civil liberty violation?
And that's one thing that really depends on who's hosting the rally, because and I asked, I just was curious whether or not Loeffler was advertising at the rally, but assuming that if it is a public place, because as all of you probably know, I do a lot of constitutional rights litigation. If the government is saying that one person can advertise themselves, but another person can't, like one person can distribute campaign materials or 2 people can and the rest can't, that would be unconstitutional, because the government isn't allowed to discriminate on content of speech. But a private entity that is being funded by private funds, so whatever, like if the rally was hosted and staffed by, you know, people from the president, to like the Trump for President campaign, then, and the security that were going around telling some people they could advertise and some that they couldn't, are people like are all privately paid by the campaign, they can discriminate based on speech. They can tell, you know, they can let Collins and Loeffler campaign, or just one of them campaign, just letting Collins campaign. That's why I'm curious if Loeffler was allowed to, but not allow anyone else to, or if President.
Let's fight a little bit, Alex. Let's fight a little bit. So if the security that was on site is Secret Service, federal agents being paid under the federal tax dollar, and Air Force One landed within 5 nautical miles of that event, bringing in the President of the United States and all of his executive staff that comes along with his campaign, then how can we say that the private sector is running this if the tax dollars paying to get people there? That's very specific, and I agree with you there. In that, and this is where, you know, it's very important to find out a lot of very minute details, but are very, very relevant. For example, if the people who came up to Derrick or to Brian were Secret Service,
and they came up and they said, you aren't allowed to hand out any campaign materials here. Like you are not allowed to do that. But they did not stop Collins from handing out campaign materials. And those are Secret Service agents, like federal Secret Service, publicly paid people telling discriminating on content, allowing Collins signs or Collins shirts, but not allowing Grayson shirts or Brian shirts. That would be, in my mind, that to me seems like a constitutional rights violation. That would be
right. So we have pictures from the event where clearly Loeffler is displaying, Collins is displaying, and every other Republican incumbent in the state is displaying their shirts of support, signs and banners all over the parking lot in the venue. But Brian and Derrick Grayson were told to stand down. I would argue, Alex, that this conversation might actually turn into a legal consultation.
No, well, I mean honestly, yes, but what it comes down to is who is it that was doing that? So that's why I said it had to be Secret Service agents. So if there were some private venue security that were told by the Trump campaign, oh yeah, shut down those two people, but not these others, that's completely within the realm of being permissible. Same thing if the venue independently was like, oh no, we're shutting down like these 2 or 3 candidates, but not Collins and Loeffler. So I
would also argue that the venue itself was the Macon-Bibb Airport. Therefore, it is also owned by a government entity. It is not privately owned, and taxpayers fund it.
Yeah, and it all depends on who it is that was specifically shutting down the speech. Generally speaking, if it is a government agent, like somebody working for the government, that is saying this speech is okay, but this speech isn't, and it's a content differential, and it's a government agent doing it, that government agent likely violated somebody's constitutional rights. But it has to be a government agent that was doing it. It can't be a private agent or someone that the Trump campaign had hired. So that's where the distinction is very, very fine. And it really comes down to who it was that was giving that order. And it's
right. And good luck challenging a badge and identification in that location with a white t-shirt and a backwards hat on, running across the stage behind the president. Josie, I told you I'd come to you. I'm going to come back to you real briefly.
Okay. Can I talk now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I was all the time, and I want to continue with the story, what happened to me. I stay all the time with people. Every time I move from one place to another, people were calling my name, Josie Cruz, Josie Cruz. So everybody was excited. I voted for you. There is a lot of people from this number 4 who went down to Macon. The funny part, and I shouldn't say funny, the sarcastic part is President Trump talked about Venezuela 4 times. 4 times. He's saying that he's fighting socialism when every time he mentioned Venezuela, but he never got my name in to say, this is a citizen who is fighting socialism here in Georgia, who is the only one running in district number 4 because nobody wanted to do it. And she really wants to be a prosperity and opportunity to the minority group in district number 4. So, and also, he couldn't even know that I am the one who is challenging the main brain behind the President Trump's impeachment, which is Hen Johnson. So when we have these people not helping my campaign or at least saying something good about me campaigning in district number 4, it's like they want to keep on sending Hen Johnson back to President Trump. And they say with a big mouth that they want to help President Trump and they support President Trump. Fighting socialism is more than talking, the GOP neglected my name at this point because it's the number 4 time now. I can assure it was neglection or sabotage on my campaign, on my candidacy, to be at least endorsed by the president that day. But let me tell you something. If you go to Twitter, you're going to see how Twitter blow up about why the president didn't say Josie Cruz in Georgia when she's the only candidate in Georgia who experienced socialism who know how is socialism, who is fighting socialism in the district number 4, which is the one of the most prominent socialist district in Georgia. Go to my Twitter account, which is Josie Z in Twitter, and you're gonna see how people are very upset. I'm asking David Schaefer, asking Joe Proenza, asking Chairwoman GOP and the GOP National. They're asking President Trump, everybody, what happened with my candidacy, why my name was not there in that list on Friday. I yield back.
Yeah, that's an interesting question that every constituent in the 4th district should be asking, regardless of party affiliation. So continuing very quickly, getting a couple more topics in, folks. I know that we have been all over the place, a bunch of stuff going on, but I mean, come on, it's 2020, it's COVID, there's an election 2 weeks from now, so why not? Well, what the hell? Let's just run all over the place. Grayson, coming back to you, my brother. Let's talk about Hunter Biden and his criminal acts. Let's talk about the laptop for just a minute. And Derrick, as soon as you're finished with your little wrap up on Mr. Biden himself, Brian, I'm going to let you segue into that, and then we're going to close out with the topic of the night. So, Derrick, the floor is yours.
Well, the thing with Hunter Biden that I found interesting, I read an article that, so now I can't speak for the veracity of it at all, but I found it interesting that it said Hunter was so upset with his father that he intentionally left those laptops to be discovered to bring down his father. Now, I don't know if that's true. I heard Tucker, who obviously has content from the laptop, he read off a text message where, of course, there is Hunter involved with an underage girl, I believe at the age of 14, and he is nude. He also pointed out that it's obvious that Joe Biden, Segregation Joe, loves his son very much. What's interesting to me, Danny, is Hunter had all of the advantages that many Black people do not. Yet he became addicted to crack cocaine. It is clear and evident that he was engaged in criminal activity, selling his father's position or access based on his father's position. And yet people still will vote for Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. It is clear, if you follow the chain of events, that Joe Biden is aware of what's going on. All of that money did not go to Hunter himself. This is the perfect example of how politicians go into office broke and become multi-millionaires during their tenure in DC. That goes for Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters. That's what David Perdue is doing. David Perdue was already a millionaire, but David Perdue, there have been several instances put out where he has capitalized financially because of his access. And I remember saying this when I ran against him in 2014. Why would a man who's already a millionaire want to go and make $147,000 a year? I said, for access to power and the ability to multiply that tenfold. He is unlike Donald Trump, wasn't a billionaire. And that is what people don't understand. That is what they cannot see. Bill Clinton, they went into the White House with a net worth of $500,000. They are worth probably 20 times, maybe 50 times that. Definitely multi-millionaires now. Same thing with Barack Obama. While I will acknowledge that he made his first million from a book sale while he was a senator, he is certainly worth more than that now. So that is what this is about, personal enrichment. And I'll close with this. Do not forget that I was told in words by a lady named Linda Smith, who was the chairman of the DeKalb GOP. Alex, you remember her. Woman called me into her office because I was making the other candidates, the other opponents, look crazy. Because I'm talking about the Constitution and what they haven't done while they've been in DC. And she said to me in words, well, Derrick, we would like to ask you to pick something further down the trough. It's not your turn yet. Yours will come. These people have paid their dues. I have the recording. And I said to her, you know what? I appreciate what you're saying, but if you can't help me, that's fine. Just get the hell out of my way and I'll do it myself. Not to mention, I was offered $20,000 to drop out of the race and run against Hank Guam tipping over Johnson. These are things that I can prove. But you know what? Most people won't even bat an eye. Somebody posted that they voted for me today and for President Trump for another 4 years. And a guy commented and said, sounds like you're playing fantasy football. That is the mindset of these voters that we have out here. And it is just simply a shame. Thank you very much. I yield.
Well, I mean, Derrick, the only point in all of this that I'll argue with, I mean, who the hell wouldn't do a little bit of crack cocaine for a couple $1 million? I mean, I might. Anyway, Brian, coming to you.
I think it all comes back to foreign aid and corruption. That revolving door that they have when it comes to foreign aid, money is sent over to foreign governments and it's recycled back to the candidates through foreign aid, through their contacts. Great examples in Ukraine with Hunter Biden and I believe I'm trying to think of what was John Kerry's son, I believe, Archer. Archer was convicted of corruption as well as somebody else, and he's involved with a corporation in China with Hunter Biden, where they received $1.5 billion from the Bank of China. That money comes back through in payoffs, and it's just a matter of getting somebody in there that actually in the Department of Justice that will actually go after this corruption. Right now, it's not happening. You don't see. Look at President Trump with the Russian hoax and the Russian gate and stuff like that. We have still yet to see any indictments at all. And quite honestly, if by chance Trump doesn't win, that's going to get buried. Okay.
Well, I highly doubt that we will turn very much further without indictments. I think that we've already seen a positive track on due process taking its course this year thus far. And just to note, folks, anybody that tries to employ me or for any race that I run in the future, I was simply joking, referencing using crack cocaine. However, I will submit to your analysis at request. Alex Johnson. So Derrick made mention of the GOP and whatnot, and the way that he was approached, and you went to laughing. So I have to come to you and see what your flavor is in this.
Oh no, because back then the GOP. I'm just remembering back. This was when Derrick was around the DeKalb GOP, and now Derrick's back. But back then it was right after. I think it was a little bit after 2012 when the GOP was all in favor of keeping out anyone who supported Ron Paul and Liberty, and there was a small sort of a civil war in the DeKalb GOP. I think I had run for chairman there in order to try to make the party better, and I think Linda had ended up winning by a margin. And I got along with Linda fine, but some of the people around her definitely were did not like to rock the boat. They really liked the idea of the GOP, like any members of the GOP, just sitting there and voting Republican and falling in line behind the incumbents, regardless of whether or not they actually stood for Republican principles and actually voted constitutionally and did things that actually helped the people and stood up for individual rights. So I was laughing just because I was remembering back to that war, which ended up it ended up resolving itself in that pretty much they ran off a lot of people. The party ended up getting down to low membership numbers. Then ultimately people who actually stood for principle ended up in charge now in the DeKalb GOP because some people like Linda actually got stabbed in the back, in my opinion, in my subjective opinion, by the people who were allegedly going to like lead the GOP to greatness by us just falling in line. They ended up pretty much doing nothing and running it into the ground, which is something that I had been predicting. And, it's why I'm president of the Georgia Republican Assembly and really pushing to get better people into party office. But I just laughed because I was remembering back to that disaster of a time in the DeKalb GOP of people trying to actually keep out principled people like, those of us currently on this roundtable.
Yeah, who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? Alex, how do people find you, brother? One last thing. What's your website? You're the president of an organization here in Georgia that everybody in the GOP should join. Anybody that's a true diehard red Republican, how do we find you?
Yeah, anybody who believes in Republican principles and going against the establishment, GeorgiaRA.com. That's www.Georgia spelled out, then RA.com. And all of our principles are on the site, and we endorse in contested primaries. And we really, like, our members do, not me. In my opinion, has nothing to do with it. It's all about our members. We're very member centric and all about empowering our members to have their voice heard and actually being educated on good information, cutting around the propaganda in the media. So GeorgiaRA.com.
Well, Alex, here on this show, we value your opinion and we thank you for your contribution tonight, as always, and look forward to seeing you next week. Josie Cruz, coming to you, ma'am. How do people find you?
Go to my website. There is 2 more weeks, 14 days, yes, to vote. Go to my website, JOHSIECRUC2020.com, josiecruz2020.com. You can go visit, read my blogs. You can contribute if you want to help me out. And I got very good news. A lot of people are very excited for my candidacy. So we might be giving a lot of people some surprises. You never know.
And Josie, to you as well. Thank you always tonight. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Mr. Brian Slowinski, great contributor to the show tonight. How do we find you?
Easy to find me. It's voteslowinski.com. It's VOTESLOWINSKI. And just want to add a little reference. You notice that Kelly Loeffler has a picture of Chairman Mao in her house. If you look behind me here, this is actually a picture of George Washington and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Big difference. Vote accordingly.
Well done, Brian. All right, Brian, we thank you every time, always, and hopefully we'll be able to see you next week as well. Coming up on 1 week out at that point from the election, we got 14 days to go. Mr. Derrick Grayson.
Oh, no. Can y'all see this? Hold on, wait a minute. Maybe I don't know. Y'all, you probably can't see it. I'm looking at a photograph I just saw on Facebook. A guy's in the bathroom looking back at the camera. To his right is a man in a dress urinating at the urinals, and he's standing up urinating, and he looks back and the caption goes, "The moment you realize you should not have voted Democrat." I'm gonna put it on my Facebook wall. But at any rate, you can find
there's still another note to be made here, Derrick, and that is that our closings on this show obviously don't interest you, and Facebook does. But carry on.
All right. So at any rate, GraysonForGeorgia.com, Grayson FORGA.com. Come out and support, and remember, if you don't vote for Collins or Loeffler or Perdue, you have done a wonderful job. Even if I don't get the vote, just don't vote for them. Send a message to the GOP establishment that we will no longer stand for voting all R when you give us shoddy and traitorous candidates to run for office that are only going to go and personally enrich themselves. And I tell everybody, and it made some people mad. And one lady told me she's lost her patience with me, Danny. Her her patience, because I'm not a team player, because I voted for Shane T. Hazel, the libertarian. I'm an independent thinker, and I know what David Perdue does. And David Perdue said this of Karen Handel. He said, I'm college educated. I got the recording. I'm college educated. And these problems in Washington are complicated. You need somebody with the education to be able to handle it. Karen Handel, she's a college dropout. In other words, only a high school education. This is what they think about you. Remember that. Remember that. You don't have to vote for them to save the country. Send them a message will be the first step towards restoring the country. And I will always say, and will continue to say, if you don't like the way I part my hair, you don't like how I talk, there are other people. If you hate Republicans, fine. Then go and vote for Brian Slowinski. I will not be upset to see Brian Slowinski in Washington, D.C. as a libertarian, because I know he's going to obey the Constitution. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of my panelists tonight for joining me here on this evening's hour of our show. Tonight in our closeout, it is very important that I go down a list of a couple of things that I want to share with each and every one of you. First off, to my panelists and all of my guests that are here watching live, I want to issue a challenge that we'll revisit next week. There is a movie called Idiocracy. Might not seem like much to many, and it might hurt you a little bit. Watching it, you'll think that brain cells are dying off and possibly losing and wasting a bunch of time in your life. But if you would take just a step of faith in me and watch this movie, just sit down, hunker down for a little bit. I need you to watch this before you vote. If you've already voted, or you're a politician or you're a person of influence, I need you to watch this and share the idea of Idiocracy with those that are headed to the polls. Folks, we are living in really, really perilous and weird times. This election is so important. Out of every human walking planet Earth, we are down to the likes of our president and Joe Biden. Not another single soul that could stand up and represent any of us better. Think about that. That's at the federal level. So get down to your local elections. Let's talk about Georgia's 4th district. Let's talk about the Senate seats. If you really want to get into the weeds, if somebody couldn't back Trump, but they're willing to step up and say that they're the best thing since sliced bread, are they really truly the best candidate to represent you? Derrick Grayson said it best: vote for anybody but them. It's not about who wins down here at our level. It's about elevating all of us together, all in one. I want to send a message to all of you that represent the GOP, the grand old party here in the state of Georgia, from the chair, the vice chair, down to the county chairs and whatnot. I want to personally thank you for your service to the state of Georgia, for representing the Republican Party and showing absolutely every single one of us, candidate and citizenry, your fair and unbiased approach to fair elections and supporting the President of the United States. I also want to note to those that are watching here that think I sound like a flubbering idiot, that I'm going to call you out on your rhetoric and your behavior. Slamming the door in the face of one member of the GOP or one Republican is slamming one door too many. When you slam one in somebody that has the heart, the mind, and the service record to represent us, we, the people, and you take it upon yourself from an unpaid chair position, thinking that your title elevates you to some being of power above all of us, be sure and know this, that we, your constituents, know that every knee shall bow. And it is our goal here in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, to bring all of you to heel. You will kneel to we the people and to God Almighty. Your position does not make you invincible. One day, whether it be politics, your age, a party shift, or hell, corruption and your economic imbalance, you will fall. And when you do, we stand ready to pick up the flag, to defend it with our lives and protect our children. That being said, you've done enough ignoring all of us. You've done enough making your money. And I'm speaking to everybody from city, through the counties of Georgia, to the top of the state, all the way to the Fed. My name is Danny Ellyson. And yeah, I said it. we're watching you. We're coming for you. It might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be this election season, but know this, my children carry my blood and they will also carry my passion. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. 2 weeks to the election. Get out and do something different. If you want to see different, be different. Go out there and vote for Grayson. Vote for Slawinski. Vote for Cruz. Give us a shot just to raise a little bit of hell. For me and my panelists here on the show tonight, we thank you for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule. And for me and my family here in the Low Country,